Hey everyone, I'm Brett Kinsella. I am the founder of Synthedia and VoiceBot.ai, and this is GAIN, the Generative AI News Rundown. We usually do this on Thursdays or Fridays sometimes, sometime around 11 or 12 Eastern time, and we get together and we talk about the news. Well, we're going to have a lot of news today for the OpenAI Developer Day. This is the first OpenAI Developer Day. There's a very limited number of people, a few of whom I think some of us on the panel know, who are going to be live for the event in San Francisco. But many of us either couldn't make it or didn't get a ticket. So we're going to be watching the keynote along with you live here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the keynote on the screen this whole time. And we're also going to have some panelists. And so in the backstage, like, make comments, let us know you are here. I know I've got a few shout outs already. We've got, let's see, Michael Novak is in from Arlington, Virginia. We have Woozy Rogers here, Roger Kibbe, lots of really good stuff here. And I'm going to pull this down, or I'm going to start bringing people up on stage here. We've got Michal Stanislawek, who's going to be here. Hey, Michal, say hello to everybody.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone. All right. From Utter One, a lot of people in the voice community will know him. Hey, Thomas, thanks for joining us. Anyone from Germany around? If you are, everybody who is watching, just put something in the chat. We should be able to see that. Let us know where you are in from and what you're looking most forward to today. All right. João Paulo Elquires is with us today. João Paulo, how are you today? Okay. I don't know if you said something, but... Oh, we may have lost your audio there. So maybe you can work with Andrew on that, João Paulo. But João Paulo is here from Brazil and IR Digital, one of the leading developers in Brazil. Michal Stanislawek, Utter One, and Hear Me AI, some of the top developers for voice and AI applications out of, I think you're calling in from Poland today. And we have Michael Freenor from Willow Tree. Hey, Michael, how are you? Michael, you are on mute right now, but if you want to say hi to everybody, to unmute, or in fact, I can unmute you. Although you might be frozen all of a sudden. I'm not really sure what's going on there. All right, well, we'll work through all these types of things. And we have Tejas. Hey, Tejas, how are you?
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Tejas is from Rooter Finn and one of the best thinkers in the space, I think. Hey, Michael, it sounds like you might be back in business with us.
Just a bit of latency. Sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, no problem. No problem. And okay, so this is our panel. So we're all going to be talking. There might be some other folks that we'll bring up from time to time if we get a chance, but really happy to be here. I see Janice Mandel is here. Hey, Janice, how are you? Let's see who else. Alexander Eichenstatter is here from Paris. Excellent. Oh, Betty's calling in as well. Hey, Betty, how you doing? Dave Matthias, all good. Ooh, the music's getting louder. I wonder if this means
good morning. Thank
you
for joining us today.
We're going to all go backstage.
Please, welcome to the stage.
And we're going to listen to this live together. Make comments. Let us know what you guys are thinking, what you're looking forward to.
Good morning. Welcome to our first ever And in the last few months, we launched voice and vision capabilities so that ChatGPT can now see, hear, and speak. And more recently, there's a lot. You don't have to clap each time. And more recently, we launched DALL-E 3, the world's most advanced image model. You can use it, of course, inside of ChatGPT. For our enterprise customers, we launched ChatGPT Enterprise, which offers enterprise-grade security and privacy, higher speed GPT-4 access, longer context windows, a lot more. Today, we've got about 2 million developers building on our API for a wide variety of use cases, doing amazing stuff. Over 92% of Fortune 500 companies building on our products. And we have about 100 million weekly active users now on ChatGPT. And what's incredible on that is we and it'll do better at following instructions in general. We're also introducing a new feature called reproducible outputs. You can pass a seed parameter, and it'll make the model return consistent outputs. This, of course, gives you a higher degree of control over model behavior. This rolls out in beta today. And in the coming weeks, we'll roll out a feature to let you view log probs in the API. All right, number 3, better world knowledge. You want these models to be able to access better knowledge about the world. So do we. So we're launching retrieval in the platform. You can bring knowledge from outside documents or databases into whatever you're building. We're also updating the knowledge cutoff. We are just as annoyed as all of you, probably more, that GPT-4's knowledge about the world ended in 2021. We will try to never let it get that out of date again. GPT-4 Turbo has knowledge about the world up to April of 2023, and we will continue to improve that over time. Number 4, new modalities. Surprising no one, DALL-E 3, GPT-4 Turbo with vision, and the new text-to-speech model are all going into the API today. We have a handful of customers that have just started using DALL-E 3 to programmatically generate images and designs. Today, Coke is launching a campaign that lets its customers generate Diwali cards using DALL-E 3. And of course, our safety systems help developers protect their applications against misuse. Those tools are available in the API. GPT-4 Turbo can now accept images as inputs via the API, can generate captions, classifications, and analysis. For example, Be My Eyes uses this technology to help people who are blind or have low vision with their daily tasks like identifying products in front of them. And with our new text-to-speech model, you'll be able to generate incredibly natural-sounding audio from text in the API with 6 preset voices to choose from. I'll play an example.
Did you know that Alexander Graham Bell, the eminent inventor, was enchanted by the world of sounds? His ingenious mind led to the creation of the graphophone, which etched sounds onto wax, making voices whisper through time.
This is much more natural than anything else we've heard out there. Voice can make apps more natural to interact with and more accessible. It also unlocks a lot of use cases like language learning and voice assistance. Speaking of new modalities, we're also releasing the next version of our open source speech recognition model, Whisper v3, today, and it'll be coming soon to the API. It features improved performance across many languages, and we think you're really going to like it. Okay, number 5, customization. Fine-tuning has been working really well for GPT 3.5 since we launched it a few months ago. Starting today, we're going to expand that to the 16K version of the model. Also starting today, we're inviting active fine-tuning users to apply for the GPT-4 fine-tuning experimental access program. The fine-tuning API is great for adapting our models to achieve better performance in a wide variety of applications with a relatively small amount of data. But you may want a model to learn a completely new knowledge domain or to use a lot of proprietary data. So today we're launching a new program called Custom Models. With custom models, our researchers will work closely with a company to help them make a great custom model, especially for them and their use case using our tools. This includes modifying every step of the model training process, doing additional domain-specific pre-training, a custom RL post-training process, it's tailored for a specific domain, and whatever else. We won't be able to do this with many companies to start. It'll take a lot of work, and in the interest of expectations, at least initially, it won't be cheap. But if you're excited to push things as far as they can currently go, please get in touch with us, and we think we can do something pretty great. Okay, and then number 6, higher rate limits. We're doubling the tokens per minute for all of our established GPT-4 customers so that it's easier to do more. And you'll be able to request changes to further rate limits and quotas directly in your API account settings. In addition to these rate limits, it's important to do everything we can do to make you successful building on our platform. So we're introducing Copyright Shield. Copyright Shield means that we will step in and defend our customers and pay the costs incurred if you face legal claims around copyright infringement. And this applies both to ChatGPT Enterprise and the API. And let me be clear, this is a good time to remind people, we do not train on data from the API or ChatGPT Enterprise ever. All right. There's actually one more developer request that's been even bigger than all of these. And so I'd like to talk about that now. And that's pricing. GPT-4 Turbo is the industry-leading model. It delivers a lot of improvements that we just covered, and it's a smarter model than GPT-4. We've heard from developers that there are a lot of things that they want to build, but GPT-4 just costs too much. They've told us that if we could decrease the cost by 20, 25%, that would be great, a huge leap forward. I'm super excited to announce that we worked really hard on this, and GPT-4 Turbo, a better model, is considerably cheaper than GPT-4 by a factor of 3x for prompt tokens and 2x for completion tokens starting today. So the new pricing is 1 cent per 1,000 prompt tokens and 3 cents per 1,000 completion tokens. For most customers, that will lead to a blended rate more than 2.75 times cheaper to use for GPT-4 Turbo than GPT-4. We worked super hard to make this happen. We hope you're as excited about it as we are. So we decided to prioritize price first because we had to choose one or the other. But we're going to work on speed next. We know that speed is important too. Soon, you will notice GPT-4 Turbo becoming a lot faster. We're also decreasing the cost of GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K. Also, input tokens are 3x less, and output tokens are 2x less, which means that GPT 3.5 16K is now cheaper than the previous GPT 3.5 4K model. Running a fine-tuned GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K version is also cheaper than the old fine-tuned 4K version. OK, so we just covered a lot about the model itself. We hope that these changes address your feedback. We're really excited to bring all of these improvements to everybody now. In all of this, we're lucky to have a partner who is instrumental in making it happen. So I'd like to bring on a special guest, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Satya, thanks so much for coming here.
It's fantastic to be here. And Sam, congrats. I mean, I'm really looking forward to Turbo and everything else that you have coming. It's been just fantastic partnering with you guys.
2 questions. Won't take too much of your time. How is Microsoft thinking about the partnership currently?
Look, first, we love you guys. No, look, it's been fantastic for us. In fact, I remember the first time I think you reached out and said, hey, do you have some Azure credits? We've come a long way from there.
Thank you for those. Yeah. That was great.
You guys have built something magical. I mean, quite frankly, there are 2 things for us when it comes to the partnership. The first is these workloads, and even when I was listening backstage to how you're describing what's coming even, it's just so different and new. I've been in this infrastructure business for 3 decades.
No one has ever seen infrastructure like
this. And the workload, the pattern of the workload, these training jobs are so synchronous and so large and so data parallel. And so the first thing that we have been doing is building in partnership with you the system, all the way from thinking from power to the DC to the rack to the accelerators to the network, and just really the shape of Azure is drastically changed and is changing rapidly in support of these models that you're building. And so our job number 1 is to build the best systems so that you can build the best models and then make that all available to developers. And so the other thing is we ourselves are a developer. So we're building products. In fact, my own conviction of this entire generation of foundation models completely changed the first time I saw GitHub Copilot on GPT. And so we want to build our Copilot, GitHub Copilot, all as developers on top of OpenAI APIs. And so we are very, very committed to that. And what does that mean to developers? Look, I always think of Microsoft as a platform company, a developer company, and a partner company. And so we want to make, for example, we want to make GitHub available, GitHub Copilot available as the Enterprise Edition available to all the attendees here so that they can try it out.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, we're very excited about that. And you can count on us to build the best infrastructure in Azure with your API support and bring it to all of you. And then even things like the Azure Marketplace. So for developers who are building products out here to get to market rapidly. So that's sort of really our intent here.
Great. And how do you think about the future? Future of the partnership or future of AI or whatever?
Yeah, there.
Anything you want.
That's, like there are a couple of things for me that I think are going to be very, very key for us, right? One is I just described how the systems that are needed as you aggressively push forward on your roadmap requires us to be on the top of our game. And we intend fully to commit ourselves deeply to making sure you all, as builders of these foundation models, have not only the best systems for training and inference, but the most compute so that you can keep pushing forward on the frontiers, because I think that that's the way we're going to make progress. The second thing I think both of us care about, in fact, quite frankly, the thing that excited both sides to come together is your mission and our mission. Our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And to me, ultimately, AI is only going to be useful if it truly does empower, right? I mean, I saw the video you played early. I mean, that was fantastic to see those, hear those voices describe what AI meant for them and what they were able to achieve. So ultimately, it's about being able to get the benefits of AI broadly disseminated to everyone, I think is going to be the goal for us. And then the last thing is, of course, we're very grounded in the fact that safety matters, and safety is not something that you'd care about later, but it's something we do shift left on. And we're very, very focused on that with you all.
Great. Well, I think we have the best partnership in tech. I'm excited for us to build AGI together.
No, I'm really excited. Have a fantastic
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
See ya. Okay, so we have shared a lot of great updates for developers already, and we got a lot more to come. But even though this is a developer conference, we can't resist making some improvements to ChatGPT. So a small one, ChatGPT now uses GPT-4 Turbo with all the latest improvements, including the latest knowledge cutoff, which will continue to update. That's all live today. It can now browse the web when it needs to, write and run code, analyze data, take and generate images, and much more. And we heard your feedback, that model picker, extremely annoying. That is gone starting today. You will not have to click around the drop-down menu. All of this will just work together. ChatGPT, yeah. ChatGPT will just know what to use and when you need it. But that's not the main thing. And neither was price, actually, the main developer request. There was one that was even bigger than that. And I want to talk about where we're headed, and the main thing we're here to talk about today. So we believe that if you give people better tools, they will do amazing things. We know that people want AI that is smarter, more personal, more customizable, can do more on your behalf. Eventually, you'll just ask a computer for what you need, and it'll do all of these tasks for you. These capabilities are often talked in the AI field about as agents. The upsides of this are going to be tremendous. At OpenAI, we really believe that gradual iterative deployment is the best way to address the safety issues, the safety challenges with AI. We think it's especially important to move carefully towards this future of agents. It's going to require a lot of technical work and a lot of thoughtful consideration by society. So today, we're taking our first small step that moves us towards this future. We're thrilled to introduce GPTs. GPTs are tailored versions of ChatGPT for a specific purpose. You can build a GPT, a customized version of ChatGPT for almost anything, with instructions, expanded knowledge, and actions, and then you can publish it for others to use. And because they combine instructions, expanded knowledge, and actions, they can be more helpful to you. They can work better in many contexts, and they can give you better control. They'll make it easier for you to accomplish all sorts of tasks or just have more fun, and you'll be able to use them right within ChatGPT. You can, in effect, program a GPT with language just by talking to it. It's easy to customize the behavior so that it fits what you want. This makes building them very accessible, and it gives agency to everyone. So we're going to show you what GPTs are, how to use them, how to build them, and then we're going to talk about how they'll be distributed and discovered. And then after that, for developers, we're going to show you how to build these agent-like experiences into your own apps. So first, let's look at a few examples. Our partners at code.org are working hard to expand computer science in schools. They've got a curriculum that is used by tens of millions of students worldwide. Code.org crafted Lesson Planner GPT to help teachers provide a more engaging experience for middle schoolers. If a teacher asks it to explain for loops in a creative way, it does just that. In this case, it'll do it in terms of a video game character, repeatedly picking up coins. Super easy to understand for an 8th grader. As you can see, this GPT brings together Code.org's extensive curriculum and expertise and lets teachers adapt it to their needs quickly and easily. Next, Canva has built a GPT that lets you start designing by describing what you want in natural language. If you say, make a poster for a dev day reception this evening, and you give it some details, it'll generate a few options to start with by hitting Canva's APIs. Now, this concept may be familiar to some of you. We've evolved our plugins to be custom actions for GPTs. You can keep chatting with this to see different iterations, and when you see one you like, you can click through to Canva for the full design experience. So now, we'd like to show you a GPT live. Zapier has built a GPT that lets you perform actions across 6,000 applications to unlock all kinds of integration possibilities. I'd like to introduce Jessica, one of our solutions architects, who is going to drive this demo. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. My name is Jessica Shea. I work with partners and customers to bring their product to life. And today, I can't wait to show you how hard we've been working on this. So let's get started. So to start, where your GPT will live is on this upper left corner. I'm going to start with clicking on the Zapier AI actions. And on the right-hand side, you can see that's my calendar for today. So it's quite a day. I've already used this before, so it's actually already connected to my calendar. To start, I can ask, what's on my schedule for today? We build GPTs with security in mind. So before it performs any action or share data, it will ask for your permission. So right here, I'm going to say aloud. So GPT is designed to take in your instructions, make a decision on which capability to call to perform that action, and then execute that for you. So you can see right here, it's already connected to my calendar. It pulls into my information. And then I've also prompted it to identify conflicts on my calendar. So you can see right here, it actually was able to identify that. So it looks like I have something coming up. So what if I want to let Sam know that I have to leave early? So right here, I say, let Sam know I gotta go, chasing GPUs. So with that, I'm gonna swap to my conversation with Sam, and then I'm gonna say, yes, please run that. Sam, did you get that?
I did.
Awesome. So this is only a glimpse of what is possible, and I cannot wait to see what you all will build. Thank you, and back to you, Sam.
Thank you, Jessica. So those are 3 great examples. In addition to these, there are many more kinds of GPTs that people are creating, and many, many more that will be created soon. We know that many people who want to build a GPT don't know how to code. We've made it so that you can program a GPT just by having a conversation. We believe that natural language is going to be a big part of how people use computers in the future, and we think this is an interesting early example. So I'd like to show you how to build one. All right, so I want to create a GPT that helps give founders and developers advice when starting new projects. I'm going to go to create a GPT here, and this drops me into the GPT builder. I worked with founders for years at YC, and still, whenever I meet developers, the questions I get are always about how do I think about a business idea? Can you give me some advice? I'm going to see if I can build a GPT to help with that. So to start, GPT Builder asks me what I want to make. And I'm going to say, I want to help startup founders think through their business ideas and get advice. After the founder has gotten some advice, grill them on why they are not growing faster. All right, so to start off, I just tell the GPT a little bit about what I want here. And it's going to go off and start thinking about that. And it's going to write some detailed instructions for the GPT. It's also going to, let's see, ask me about a name. How do I feel about Startup Mentor? That's fine. That's good. So if I didn't like the name, of course, I could call it something else. But it's going to try to have this conversation with me and start there. And you can see here on the right in the preview mode that it's already starting to fill out the GPT, where it says what it does. It has some ideas of additional questions that I could ask. And you know what? So it just generated a candidate. Of course, I could regenerate that or change it, but I sort of like that. So I will say, that's great. And you see now that the GPT is being built out a little bit more as we go. Now, what I want this to do, how it can interact with users, I could talk about style here. But what I'm going to say is I am going to upload transcripts of some lectures about startups I have given. Please give advice based off of those. All right. So now it's going to go figure out how to do that. And I would like to show you the configure tab. So you can see some of the things that were built out here as we were going by the builder itself. And you can see that there's capabilities here that I can enable. I could add custom actions. These are all fine to leave. I'm going to upload a file. So here is a lecture that I picked that I gave with some startup advice. And I'm going to add that here. In terms of these questions, this is a dumb one. The rest of those are reasonable and very much things founders often ask. I'm going to add one more thing to the instructions here, which is be concise and constructive with feedback. All right. So again, if we had more time, I'd show you a bunch of other things. But this is like a decent start. And now we can try it out over on this preview tab. So I will say, what's a common question? What are 3 things to look for? Oops. What are 3 things to look for when hiring employees at an early stage startup? Now it's going to look at that document I uploaded. It'll also have, of course, all of the background knowledge of GPT-4. That's pretty good. Those are 3 things that I definitely have said many times. Now we could go on and it would start following the other instructions and grill me on why I'm not growing faster. But in the interest of time, I'm going to skip that. I'm going to publish this only to me for now. I can work on it later. I can add more content. I can add a few actions that I think would be useful. And then I can share it publicly. So that's what it looks like to create a GPT. Thank you. By the way, I always wanted to do that after all of the YC office hours. I always thought, man, someday I will be able to make a bot that will do this, and that'll be awesome. So with GPTs, we're letting people easily share and discover all the fun ways that they use ChatGPT with the world. You can make private GPTs like I just did. Or you can share your creations publicly with a link for anyone to use. Or if you're on ChatGPT Enterprise, you can make GPTs just for your company. And later this month, we're going to launch the GPT store. You can list a GPT. Thank you. I appreciate that. You can list a GPT there, and we'll be able to feature the best and the most popular GPTs. Of course, we'll make sure that GPTs in the store follow our policies before they're accessible. Revenue sharing is important to us. We're going to pay people who build the most useful and the most used GPTs a portion of our revenue. We're excited to foster a vibrant ecosystem with the GPT store. Just from what we've been building ourselves over the weekend, we're confident there's going to be a lot of great stuff. We're excited to share more information soon. So those are GPTs. and we can't wait to see what you'll build. But this is a developer conference, and the coolest thing about this is that we're bringing the same concept to the API. Many of you have already been building agent-like experiences on the API. For example, Shopify's Sidekick, which lets you take actions on the platform. Discord's Clyde lets Discord moderators create custom personalities for. And Snap's MyAI, a customized chatbot that can be added to group chats and make recommendations. These experiences are great, but they have been hard to build, sometimes taking months, teams of dozens of engineers. There's a lot to handle to make this custom assistant experience. So today, we're making that a lot easier with our new Assistants API. The Assistants API includes persistent threads, so they don't have to figure out how to deal with long conversation history, built-in retrieval, code interpreter, a working Python interpreter in a sandbox environment, and of course, the improved function calling that we talked about earlier. So we'd like to show you a demo of how this works. And here is Ramon, our head of developer experience. Welcome, Ramon.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning. Wow, it's fantastic to see you all here. It's been so inspiring to see so many of you infusing AI into your apps. Today, we're launching new modalities in the API, but we are also very excited to improve the developer experience for you all to build assistive agents. So let's dive right in. Imagine I'm building Wanderlust, a travel app for global explorers, and this is the landing page. I've actually used GPT-4 to come up with these destination ideas, and for those of you with a keen eye, these illustrations are generated programmatically using the new DALL-E 3 API available to all of you today. So it's pretty remarkable. But let's enhance this app by adding a very simple assistant to it. This is the screen. We're going to come back to it in a second. First, I'm going to switch over to the new Assistants playground. Creating an assistant is easy. You just give it a name, some initial instructions, a model. In this case, I'll pick GPT-4 Turbo. And here, I'll also go ahead and select some tools. I'll turn on Code Interpreter and Retrieval and save. And that's it. Our assistant is ready to go. Next, I can integrate with two new primitives of this Assistants API, threads and messages. Let's take a quick look at the code. The process here is very simple. For each new user, I will create a new thread. And as these users engage with their assistant, I will add their messages to these threads. Very simple. And then I can simply run the assistant at any time to stream the responses back to the app. So we can return to the app and try that in action. If I say, hey, let's go to Paris. All right, that's it. With just a few lines of code, users can now have a very specialized assistant right inside the app. And I'd like to highlight one of my favorite features here, function calling. If you have not used it yet, function calling is really powerful. And as Sam mentioned, we're taking it a step further today. It now guarantees the JSON output with no added latency. And you can invoke multiple functions at once for the first time. So here, if I carry on and say, hey, what are the top 10 things to do? We're going to have the assistant respond to that again. And here, what's interesting is that the assistant knows about functions, including those to annotate the map that you see on the right. And so now all of these pins are dropping in real time here. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And that integration allows our natural language interface to interact fluidly with components and features of our app. And it truly showcases now the harmony you can build between AI and UI, where the assistant is actually taking action. But next, let's talk about retrieval. And retrieval is about giving our assistant more knowledge beyond these immediate user messages. In fact, I got inspired and I already booked my tickets to Paris. So I'm just going to drag and drop here this PDF. While it's uploading, I can just sneak peek at it. Very typical United flight ticket. And behind the scene here, what's happening is that retrieval is reading these files, and boom, the information about this PDF appeared on the screen. And this is, of course, a very tiny PDF, but assistants can parse long-form documents from extensive text to intricate product specs, depending on what you're building. In fact, I also booked an Airbnb, so I'm just going to drag that over to the conversation as well. And by the way, we've heard from so many of you developers how hard that is to build yourself. You typically need to compute your embeddings. You need to set up chunking algorithm. Now, all of that is taken care of. And there's more than retrieval. With every API call, you usually need to resend the entire conversation history, which means setting up a key value store. That means like handling the context window, serializing messages, and so forth. That complexity now completely goes away with this new stateful API. But just because OpenAI is managing this API does not mean it's a black box. In fact, you can see the steps that the tools are taking right inside your developer dashboard. So here, if I go ahead and click on threads, this is the thread I believe we're currently working on. And see, like these are all the steps, including the functions being called with the right parameters and the PDFs I've just uploaded. But let's move on to a new capability that many of you have been requesting for a while. Code Interpreter is now available today in the API as well. That gives the AI the ability to write and execute code on the fly, but even generate files. So let's see that in action. If I say here, hey, we'll be 4 friends staying at this Airbnb, what's my share of it plus my flights? All right. Now here, what's happening is that Code Interpreter noticed that it should write some code to answer this query. So now it's computing, the number of days in Paris, the number of friends. It's also doing some exchange rate calculation behind the scene to get this answer for us. Not the most complex math, but you get the picture. Imagine you're building a very complex finance app that's crunching countless numbers, plotting charts. So really any task that you'd normally tackle with code, then Code Interpreter will work great for you. All right, I think my trip to Paris is sorted. So to recap here, we've just seen how you can quickly create an assistant that manages state for your user conversations, leverages external tools like knowledge and retrieval and Code Interpreter, and finally invokes your own functions to make things happen. But there's one more thing I wanted to show you to kind of really open up the possibilities using function calling combined with our new modalities that we're launching today. While working on Dev Day, I built a small custom assistant that knows everything about this event. But instead of having a chat interface while running around all day today, I thought, why not use voice instead? So let's bring my phone up on screen here so you can see it on the right. Awesome. So on the right, you can see a very simple Swift app that takes microphone input. And on the left, I'm actually going to bring up my terminal log so you can see what's happening behind the scenes. So let's give it a shot. Hey there, I'm on the keynote stage right now. Can you greet our attendees here at Dev Day?
Hey everyone, welcome to Dev Day. It's awesome to have you all here. Let's make it an incredible day.
Isn't that impressive? You have 6 unique and rich voices to choose from in the API, each speaking multiple languages, so you can really find the perfect fit for your app. And on my laptop here on the left, you can see the logs of what's happening behind the scenes too. So I'm using Whisper to convert the voice inputs into text, an assistant with GPT-4 Turbo, and finally the new TTS API to make it speak. But thanks to function calling, things get even more interesting when the assistant can connect to the internet and take real actions for users. So let's do something even more exciting here together. How about this? Hey, assistant, can you randomly select 5 Dev Day attendees here and give them $500 in OpenAI credits?
Yes, checking the list of attendees. Done. I picked 5 Dev Day attendees and added $500 of API credits to their account. Congrats to Christine M., Jonathan C., Stephen G., Luis K., and Suraj S.
All right, if you recognize yourself, awesome, congrats. And that's it. A quick overview today of the new Assistants API combined with some of the new tools and modalities that we launched. All starting with the simplicity of a rich text or voice conversation for your end users. We really can't wait to see what you build, and congrats to our lucky winners. Actually, you know what? You're all part of this amazing OpenAI community here, so I'm just going to talk to my assistant one last time before I step off the stage. Hey, assistant, can you actually give everyone here in the audience $500 in OpenAI credits?
Sounds great. Let me go through everyone.
All right. That function will keep running, but I've run out of time. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Back to you, Sam.
Pretty cool, huh? All right, so that Assistance API goes into beta today, and we are super excited to see what you all do with it. Anybody can enable it. Over time, GPTs and assistants, our precursors to agents, are going to be able to do much, much more. They'll gradually be able to plan and to perform more complex actions on your behalf. As I mentioned before, we really believe in the importance of gradual iterative deployment. We believe it's important for people to start building with and using these agents now to get a feel for what the world is going to be like as they become more capable. And as we've always done, we'll continue to update our systems based off of your feedback. So we're super excited that we got to share all of this with you today. We introduced GPTs, custom versions of ChatGPT that combine instructions, extended knowledge, and actions. We launched the Assistance API to make it easier to build assisted experiences with your own apps. These are our first steps towards AI agents, and we'll be increasing their capabilities over time. We introduced a new GPT-4 Turbo model that delivers improved function calling, knowledge, lowered pricing, new modalities, and more. And we're deepening our partnership with Microsoft. In closing, I wanted to take a minute to thank the team that creates all of this. OpenAI has got remarkable talent density, but still, it takes a huge amount of hard work and coordination to make all of this happen. I truly believe that I've got the best colleagues in the world. I feel incredibly grateful to get to work with them. We do all of this because we believe that AI is going to be a technological and societal revolution. It will change the world in many ways, and we're happy to get to work on something that will empower all of you to build so much for all of us. We talked about earlier how if you give people better tools, they can change the world. We believe that AI will be about individual empowerment and agency at a scale that we've never seen before, and that will elevate humanity to a scale that we've never seen before either. We'll be able to do more, to create more, and to have more. As intelligence gets integrated everywhere, we will all have superpowers on demand. We're excited to see what you all will do with this technology and to discover the new future that we're all going to architect together. We hope that you'll come back next year. What we launched today is going to look very quaint relative to what we're busy creating for you now. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for coming here today.
Hey, folks. That was pretty fun. I like that. Let's get Mel up here as well. Oh, you probably can't hear me. I moved my mic away, so you couldn't hear me earlier. Hey, everybody, that was pretty wild. Okay, so what we just saw was OpenAI talking about, I think, 2 major classes of activities, but we can break this all down separately, each individually talking about that. What I have here for everybody here, this is Gain, the Generative AI News Rundown. If you are out there and you haven't let us know that you're out there, please hit a comment really quickly. Let us know you're there. And do like. If you're on LinkedIn, there's a lot of you out there on LinkedIn. There's a lot of, actually quite a few on YouTube right now as well. So let us know what you think. What I've done is I've assembled some of the most erudite and skilled developers that I know in the space. All of the people on the stage here have not only worked with OpenAI APIs directly, but also other platforms and predate this, working with other types of assistant and AI technologies. So we've got some really interesting concepts here. Michal Stanislawek from Utter One, Michael Freenor from Willow Tree, Tejas Todade from Reuter Finn, and João Alquires from IARA Digital. Okay, great. Let's start with you, Tejas. What are your key takeaways?
I think it was extremely entertaining. I think for the first dev day, again, my background is technology along with public relations and marketing. So I thought they put up a really good show, and I think a lot, especially the one with the Whisper, with the Whisper updates and the Assistance API. I thought that was a really good demo of what the capabilities would be. And we've kind of gone down this path of trying to make chatbots work and make them, actually functional. And I feel like this is kind of like the renaissance of the chatbots. And we've seen this with Facebook in the past. We've seen it with other companies, and this seems like it actually could be, really useful. I think they gave the Shopify example. There's a couple of other, companies, even clients of ours who we can think of can really use this functionality. I also like the fact of having RAG within the model. I think that's going to make things really powerful. I think reducing the costs. I think pricing is super important, especially with API access, and that's going to make it much more easier to adopt it as the competition heats up. And I would like to explore more about the copyright shield. It seems similar to what Adobe Firefly is doing with like offering indemnity. But I know for a fact that our legal counsel will really want to know more about how that works, because that is Perry, if you're listening, hi. That's something which is like the key blocker for a lot of these applications. And if we can kind of get some real muscle behind it, I think it would, again, help drive adoption and increase use cases.
Great. All right. Michael Freenor, give me your 1 minute hot take on what we just saw.
Let's see. I'm really curious to see how these fine tunes behave. That's really what I want to see. Like, what we've discovered over at WillowTree is that some of the 3.5 model, when Turbo specifically, when you fine tune it, this can strip away some of the safety guardrails. And so I'm really curious to see if they've addressed that issue at all with the GPT-4 fine tunes, or with subsequent ways of fine tuning 3.5, or with the custom models or things like that. So, I'm coming from the perspective of reproducibility and safety and all of the rest of that. So I really want to see if that has been improved at all.
Michal Stanislawek, did you grok the presentation today?
I really did enjoy this. And I think that my key takeaway today is that we are looking at a bit of a fine moment for chatbots. It feels like OpenAI are just about to hand over the keys to building chatbots to every person on Earth, almost, and pushing us as developers to focus a little bit more on the agents and on potentially expanding the capabilities of all other applications and modalities with the conversational capabilities. So that I think is the key thing that I'm taking away from this, and something that will potentially change how we look at this whole space and what we do on a daily basis in a year's time, for sure.
All right, João Paulo Alquires, hot takes. What do you think? You were maybe
kind
of interesting. We talked about this over the weekend on LinkedIn.
Yes, we did.
You had some specific thoughts about the leaks, which most of them turned out to be true. What do you think?
Yeah. I like it. I think that there was not a lot of things for, specifically directed toward business. I think there was quite a lot of things more for the end user. I liked that they reduced the cost of GPT-4, but I was hoping that they would reduce the cost of GPT 3.5, which is expensive in a high scale. We have an Gen AI application that runs 100,000 requests per month, and it's not a beautiful bill in the end of the month. So I was hoping that they would address that, but they didn't. And I think that the JSON output thing was a very great introduction, because we have to tinkle with the prompt a lot to have this the return as a JSON output. And I liked that they talked about the GPT store, which I think will bring all my fellow combatants from the skill landscape, the skill developers from Alexa. I guess I would love to welcome them in this marketplace soon, building skills for GPT, if I could call it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll do a little comment here from Jürgen Gravestein. OpenAI single-handedly taking on the whole chatbot market. So let's talk about that. So the two major components here is we've got the GPTs, which I think the leak was it would be called MyGPT, but there was another name before that. There's been like 3 or 4 names over the past 2 months for what this is. And then we have, essentially API improvements, mostly related to GPT-4, but we hit on Whisper and some other things. So we've got the application side, and then the ChatGPT side mostly, and then we've got the API side. Okay, so let's hit the application first, because I think a lot of people are very interested in that. We've seen things like this before. So if you think like in the gaming space, in World, Convey, they allow you to basically define what a character would be, and then it actually ties into an LLM in the background, and it'll act this way. What's obviously different here is or what is a little bit more interesting here, I think, is that you're going to be able to upload your own knowledge base, like Convey does that. A few others do that today. But they're also going to have a marketplace. They're also going to have a way to have distribution in a way that's very difficult otherwise, because then it's just up to you. Okay, so Michal Stanislawek, there's a monetization angle. You've faced this in some of these different markets before. But I wonder if there will also be a discovery problem. And I wonder also how they're going to share the monetization. Is it going to be like a Spotify model, something else? You can talk about anything you want, but I want you to address each of those points.
Yeah, I think that the monetization aspect and the rev share announcement is a pretty big one, because it will naturally draw a lot of people into wanting to build the GPTs effectively. And as it is with any successful marketplace, they will soon be facing a problem of oversaturation with content. I mean, Sam has alluded to the fact that they will be applying their practices. So, it sort of hints at them potentially building some form of an approval mechanism, maybe. We know that to do that right, you really need to build out a pretty big team, or developers or builders will face, throughput problems while having their application accepted. So I can definitely see quite a lot of challenges, but the main thing for me is that it will definitely offer, like, in addition to democratizing the chatbot building, it's also giving people the reason to build those chatbots, right? They're not going to be building them in isolation. They're not going to be just hobby projects. They will be able to become a potential source of income for people.
Well, there's not necessarily going to be lock-in as well, because I think you'll have distribution through whatever the ChatGPT marketplace is. Plus, you should be able to use that in your own properties, like your website, your mobile apps. Isn't that correct? Does everyone agree with that?
Yep. And I would say that, that possibly, right, with the removal of the selection of models, we will maybe see some form of a mechanism within ChatGPT itself as an application for discovery of those GPTs, right? This way of ChatGPT being this mothership of all those small little GPTs that will surface them whenever they're needed or come into context of the conversation that the user is actually having with ChatGPT itself. So, it sort of feels like multiple personality not disorder, but order for
Versus
ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you guys can jump in anytime when people are making comments here back and forth. So feel free to do that. But Tejas, I'm going to hand it over to you for a second. I kind of feel like, sort of building on what Michal was saying, is that we have a scenario here with the way they're developing. So we've got the API level with the playground and the other API capabilities to build your own bots for sort of the hardcore business users, developers plus teams, products, and then we have the do-it-yourself model, which is like character AI on steroids, right? And in that case, what we're going to have is not developers and businesses. We're going to have content marketers, gurus, self-appointed experts, everyone who has a YouTube channel. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think, when they were making this announcement, the first thing that came to my mind was, I don't know if you guys have used this, but I posted a comment. It's like, move over Slackbot. Like, how many over here remember TacoBot from, I think it was like 2016 or so? Like, you could engage with the TacoBot and order tacos while you were at work. So this is kind of like that on steroids a little bit, and it's kind of allowing you to explore the fun side, and also kind of the more serious business cases. And you think of like how someone like McKinsey, for instance, has launched Lily, which is essentially their own knowledge base as an assistant. Like now, almost everyone, like McKinsey, obviously has the people to kind of do this at scale. But I feel like smaller organizations could truly benefit from this, where they can kind of now create these at an organizational level, as well as smaller content creator shops can also do this, where they can kind of have fun ways to put things out and also drive more engagement with their core audiences and really be distinctive. But I feel like there's also going to be a bit of a content overload problem, and it's important to kind of figure out what's your niche and how you can really stand out. So I completely agree. Like, much of the same issues we faced with Alexa, like early days of Alexa, and how it was. I saw a comment which said that it's a big step up from intent-based model to kind of having this be much more intertwined and much more engaging, which I completely agree. But some of those older issues, it'll be interesting to see how they take those head on and really make this much more streamlined and much more accessible en masse. But I'm really excited also from a mobile usage standpoint. Like, I think everything that they just mentioned, going and having those updates be in your mobile app, I would like to kind of see how that adoption kind of changes, and how, if we are going to see a higher surge in activity now on mobile apps, because I almost feel like mobile app, even though it is something which is important, it's not as as high in usage as the desktop version or the API version, for instance. So it'll be interesting to see how these updates kind of roll out.
Mm-hmm. Joe, you get in here.
Yes, I think that Alexa have released some similar features with their LLM, Alexa LLM. And I think that what we could be seeing on GPT real soon is the same that we have saw with name-free invocations, I thought was the name of it, which the idea was that you could get to a skill without having to invoke in it. And since they have been, training this model for 8 months to now have the no model picker feature, I think that they will have no trouble routing. And in a way, what I feel is that they are outsourcing the authority and the experience of some narrow fields of information to the custom GPTs. So whenever you want to talk about a specific subject, the most authoritative person or the most authoritative source on that matter will come up to talk to you, instead of them having to, rag everything and grout everything on documents. And
yeah, but it sounds like you're optimistic about this. I'm not optimistic they'll be able to sort this out. Discovery is a problem. And I think that having them do the arbitration of what the best solution is going to be a huge problem. We saw that on Google Assistant, where they rolled that out initially. The assistant would put you into Google Actions. And, I just had Brad Abrams on the Synthetia 4. He's now over running Bing Chat, but at the time he was head of engineering at Google Assistant. I mean, that thing was only available for like 9 months, and they shut it down, didn't tell anybody. because it was just dumping people into the wrong stuff consistently, and the data showed it. So did I misinterpret what you're saying, or do you think that they're going to be able to figure it out?
Benchmark it, right? The answers, they can benchmark to see if the answers are better from one source to another. This is the kind of process that you can see when you do the chunk evaluation, in embedding, right? It's the same process. You are in a way you are benchmarking which answer is the most suitable. So I think they are in a better position than Google and Alexa were when they were trying to,
because it's an information first service as opposed to an action based service. It's not just like executing. Freenor, you know a lot about pulling the right data at the right time. What do you think? Yeah, I know Michael's got Michael Freenor has some lag issues. So Michael, when you're ready, just like unmute and we'll bring you into the conversation.
No, I'm sorry. I just cut out again briefly. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so you know a lot about finding the right information at the right time and like all the challenges associated with that. Like, what do you think about it?
Well, I'm really interested to dig into their built-in RAG just to see how it works. I mean, we just spent a few months over at WillowTree side here working on RAG systems, and one of the things that we found that was kind of interesting is that trying to match from the size of a question to the size of a paragraph was kind of a dicey proposition sometimes. Just the sheer difference in size between the input strings caused a large skew in the embeddings. And so, we had, weeks of, trying to sort through that problem and try to, work around it. So I really want to see how their internal system ends up working with that and, compare it and see if there's any more stability in the underlying embeddings.
Well, is this just, in this case, it's maybe not just a RAG too, because we're talking about this arbitration process. There's an arbitrator in front of a bunch of RAGs to determine, and it's going to have some knowledge, just like the name-free invocation and Alexa had to have some knowledge of all the skills. That's why they wanted everyone to use the conversations interface, because then they knew more about the applications. But I think that this is the issue. Like, how are they going to know this? So I understand what you're saying, Joe. I think they might be able to, over time, be able to crowdsource basically answers, but they're not going to start with this idea of authority. They're going to have to establish it. And it might be a little rocky at the beginning. So.
Yeah, well, even so, I'd like to see how they're going to match somebody's request over to like a model that is supposed to answer against a large amount of information, right? It's still a problem of matching a very small string with a large collection of strings to see which one is most suitable. And I'd be interested in seeing how that's solved.
Yeah. And by the way, Michael, if you want to put a link in the chat, Michael did some interesting research recently comparing the output of the OpenAI API versus the Azure OpenAI Service API, and how even at temperature 0, there's different results, or different. You have a different experience, and it's more variable than you might think. I think you've talked to some people over there. I talked to the product manager for that as well and asked about the specific question. And they are doing additional things at Azure for grounding that OpenAI is not doing, aside from just having a more stable API. I was talking to a founder yesterday who's worked with a number of these, and he's just like, wow, OpenAI is like the least stable API out there. It's probably because they have the most volume, and they're not, everyone else is like having to deal with less volume. So he's like, he'll only use the Azure service now because at least he gets some SLAs. Let's just go back on. Go ahead. Let's just pull the thread on discovery just a moment. Any thoughts on that, Michal? Because you've thought a lot about this and experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, I think like discovery-wise, depending on what the mechanism is going to end up being, right? Because we just don't know at this particular point. But I can see that there are going to be many challenges that with this size of an audience and this size of a customer-facing solution is going to be even more significant than what we've seen so far with the skill stores and even with Google, because suddenly you're going to have 1 million pizza GPTs. Right, and you're going to have people all over the world trying to order a pizza. Right, try to deal with discovery for that. I mean, you're going to have to know much more about the users. You're going to have to know much more about the actual GPTs, right, and potentially their locations and things that will go into areas that are gray when we start thinking about the privacy of users as well, right? So I think like I see a lot of challenges, but I also see this approach for GPTs and what Xiao alluded to is for me something that potentially deals with hallucinations, maybe not directly, but indirectly, because if suddenly in those narrow fields, you're going to start passing on the context to someone who might be an expert in that particular narrow field through a GPT mechanism, then you're suddenly you're going to have less hallucinations potentially in the areas that might have not had a lot of data in the training set.
Yeah, great question too, and I think it will be interesting with their guardrails how they'll address that, because they're going to be hitting a lot of different data sources.
On this hallucination, I think that that there will be a time where we're gonna have no hallucinations at all. But I think it's interesting to think what no hallucination looks like. And I have been using Perplexity a lot in the past days because I figured out that I could solve one of the business problems I'm facing here with Perplexity. And actually, no hallucination means grounding, right? Because if you ask a topic that is up for discussion, well, then hallucination is relative, and so no hallucinations mean whatever you can get and whatever you can ground, actually, and it's not so. I guess it's more like a comes to start to ground everything you ask for it. So I think this will be like that they will actually reach no hallucination. And whenever we ask things that are up for discussion that can have multiple points of view, then it can returns multiple sources to say one point of view and the other one.
Right. So Tejas, you've thought a lot about some of these things around orchestration, arbitration, other things that you've built for clients. As we close out this section, and I just want to talk a little bit, we'll just hit on a couple more topics on this, and we'll go to the sort of the developer API side. What are your thoughts on that from a guardrail standpoint, though? I mean, in terms of if you build something and you're putting it out into this marketplace, it's one thing if you build it for yourself and you're controlling it, but you put it into this marketplace and you're like an organization. So first you have to figure out, is ChatGPT going to select you, right? And if they do, what are they going to do in terms of your output? Are they going to potentially change your output because they think there's something, or along the lines from their guardrails that they don't like?
Yeah, I think I think we're going to have to try it out. I think some of these are going to be just like trying to see like what's the output like. I think right now, I think Sam published one to himself. I feel like we're going to publish quite a few of them to our own selves and test things like test and see what kind of output it produces. There's also, I think, going to be a lot of framing that is going to be done with almost like a constitution that you write up for what this GPT is going to be like. I think he used a PDF. I forgot to take a screenshot, but I think it was like some kind of a manifest which he uploaded, which was meant to be kind of the constitution that informs what type of outputs get generated. I feel like that is going to be something which is going to help fine-tune this to some extent. But in the end, I think hallucinations is definitely an issue when you, at least in the early days, if you put out something and you say that this is going to do X, ends up doing something which is not right. It's going to cause issues, at least in the short run. But I feel like in the long run, as we have that constitution part defined more and more, almost to the extent of it being like a RAG. And that's why I said like RAG built-in model is going to be interesting, because then you can have greater control and greater accuracy in terms of what these outcomes are going to be. I feel like as much as we can move towards that and have a higher degree of confidence, that's going to be the catalyst that gives me the confidence to kind of put our name behind it and say that this is a GPT that we are releasing.
Yeah.
Until that happens, I think it's going to be really difficult because it's again, I feel like the risk versus reward. I feel like that's always going to be something which is going to be on my mind and our mind, really, to kind of see that if it makes sense to put something out there which is like seems half baked, even though it's not half baked from your perspective.
So your clients are in marketing and PR, right? So do you think you'll be recommending to them that not only do they build something for their own properties, but they also throw something in the marketplace to raise awareness and to, drive discussion?
I think it's again, every client is kind of different in terms of the risk level that they want to take, but I do see some applications from a utility standpoint. So you can kind of create something, and again, I go back to Alexa because it's such a relevant analog, in terms of like where we saw it kind of coming through. One of the most successful applications or one of the most successful Alexa skills was the Uber skill, which I personally used quite a bit. And it was something which I thought was really well designed, and it could do like 3 things. And, it did those 3 things really well. And I feel like if we can define the scope to kind of execute on those actions really well, then I think those type of utilitarian skills, or GPTs in this case, I feel like they're going to thrive, and they're going to kind of be the first ones to go out there, because they are more or less going to be deterministic in nature. And I feel like that's going to kind of help drive the first wave. And then you kind of go more into more advanced, more complex things, which potentially could lead to certain undesirable outcomes. And you'll have to just deal with them as they happen.
Right. And there's some great comments actually in the chat, and some of them are coming from the people watching on YouTube, some from LinkedIn. So I'm not sure everyone can see all of them. But Sam Inyo-Jakan, and sorry if I mispronounced your name, but I think that's correct. He worked on the Alexa team. He was talking about some of these things were problematic. Roger Kibbe, who's at Samsung and works on the early days, the launch of Bixby and everything there out of Viv Labs, he mentioned this idea perhaps there'll be user preferences for their GPTs, explicit and through use, and implicit through personalization. Getting this right is very hard, he said. He's been there. And I think that's like really important. So any of you can jump in on this. To close out this segment, we'll go to the developer section. One of the things that we talked about very briefly was, does this kill bot building platforms? Because we basically have a no-code solution here. And then we have sort of light engineering capabilities. And so you've got everything from like a voice flow. Most people know them these days for their like conversation design, but you can build bots on there. And there's a lot of other bot building platforms, which are no-code solutions. They're designed for that. And then we have more sophisticated ones, whether it be Cognigy or Core or something like that. Are those going away? I mean, is this going to, because I think a lot of them were able to get a lot of conversations earlier this year because people were interested in this and they all built solutions in. But from what I can tell, based on what's going on in the market, this whole scenario froze the market. They were able to have conversations, but no one wanted to make a commitment because they weren't sure how everything was going to shake out. This is just going to make it harder, I think, for them to close new business. Anybody have a comment on that?
I have. I actually use VoiceFlow for about 3 years now heavily. I'm a heavy user of VoiceFlow. And I don't think they are going anywhere with this launch of OpenAI, because when you step in a company that asks you to create GenAI solutions, and we have been fortunately enough to get a couple of contracts this year, you see real use case scenarios where you have to architecture a bot that does several different paths. It's not as simple as upload a PDF and start talking to the PDF. You have some flows that where the chatbot decides where to get the information from, when to ground, when not to ground. So there are all of these nuances from a real world application that you can't offer in a solution as simple as the ones that was shown on the event. And apart from that, we are also delivering GenAI solutions through endpoints to be incorporated in the client's systems, legacy systems. So they have systems, and we create endpoints for them to access this information. This will also be not available right from this kind of model that they introduced. So I think this chat bot building companies will be more directly towards company use cases, because they are all edge cases. So about 90% of the bots we built for companies are edge cases that you have to sit down and write the architecture. And I think that it will be even more relevant for these cases, but not so much for the end user applications.
Come on, Michal, you have something to say here.
As usual, yeah, I think it's really going to depend on the adoption that we're going to see on the GPTs, right? And who will actually start adopting them, and what's going to be the adoption rate within companies. I think that certainly for the prototyping, there's going to be a bit of a hit, right? Where you would have to go to a no-code platform at the moment to do some, light prototyping. You won't have to do that now, because you'll be able to just do that within a simple GPT. One thing that Michal touched on is something that I've been talking about for forever, since the launch of ChatGPT and the APIs, is that you can't build a proper complex solution because there is no good solution for context management, right? Changing context, users asking about different things out of a sudden. And I couldn't see anything that would suggest that GPTs will be able to do that. Threads within the assistant APIs, but again, within the APIs could potentially be an answer for that. So yeah, I definitely think that the chatbot building solutions will still have their place, and they're not going to go away just like that. But it's definitely a risk factor for them, especially looking forward, and especially in the light of potentially next year's announcements, right? So I would definitely see it as a potential threat, not one that will make them go away right now.
Well, it's going to be hard for them to do FAQ oriented things in the near term. I think that's like the simple things. It's just like, these are so much easier. In fact, you look at stuff that Zap Media is doing, where it's just they put in their URL, it scrapes their website, and in minutes they have their FAQ bot done.
I think that right now, 20 or 30% of the generative AI startup scene can be really worried about their future. Not necessarily the chatbot building platforms, but yeah. So it's going to be so much easier to build your own, basically, right now.
Ellen asked a question. Did they say how you will access one of these GPTs? I assume through a chatbot, but do you open a new one, launch through an existing ChatGPT chat? Was that clear? If it's your own, they showed it on the side panel. You can select it, and then it was unclear how this happens. He said there will be a marketplace. I guess you select them. Maybe they become apps in your side panel or something, so you can activate them, or it knows that you want to activate them. But I'm seeing some nodding heads. It's a little bit unclear if it's not your own, how to get to it.
It's going to be in a store. So I think if you there's a screenshot which Verge has put up from the talk, where it seems like there's a side panel which shows categories of GPTs. So lifestyle, whatever, just for fun, that's one of the categories over there. So I think there's going to be categories, and you can think of it almost like a skill store, honestly, where the same kind of interface. But to kind of go to the previous point about complexity and simplicity, and who's going to go, who should be worried. It's again, the advent of Squarespace and Wix.com did not put the really complex web development agencies out of business, but it did kind of clean up a lot of those small shops who were doing one-page, single-page applications and things like that, because it became so much easier to do it in Wix, Squarespace. So it's almost like a similar, analog over here, where you are going to be able to do a lot of those simple things really quickly, and they're going to work really well. But to, I think, Joao's point, the really complex things, the edge cases and the applications which require a lot of detailing from a flow standpoint, you're still going to have to rely on the pros for that. And that's true with almost every AI application at this point. And that's why I feel the whole AI is coming for us is a little bit of an I don't want to kind of open a can of worms, but that's kind of like an exaggerated narrative because you're still going to need the specialist for those specialist things.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good idea. So ChatGPT has become the Squarespace for bots. I think that's the headline I'm taking away from this. Hey, folks, this is Gain, the Generative AI News Rundown. Normally, we're just talking about like the news of the week. We do this on Thursdays, usually 11 a.m. I think this week we're going to do it on Friday. I keep messing up my logistics, but we do this every week. We just talk about 12 to 15 top stories. Usually my colleague Eric Schwartz and I go through this. So you should definitely check that out. Check out Synthedia if you're not looking at the Substack, the daily newsletter analysis data that you get every day in your inbox, stuff that I think normally you wouldn't find elsewhere. I think the people here are all subscribed. And read voicebot.ai. It's just like hard news. In fact, I think Eric might actually already have a story out on this, or shortly he's having one. I see him nodding in the background backstage, so he better have a story out soon on some of these things. Maybe he's capturing some of these great quotes and comments here, and it's super too. Like we've got over 50 people here between the two platforms right now, and just let us know who you are. Please give us a like on LinkedIn or YouTube if you're there, and also let us know you're out there and make comments. That would be great. Okay, so let's talk about, as we wrap up the final segment, let's talk about the technical aspects here. So we talked about the bot building stuff, but we've got some really good stuff that each of you, I think, touched on. Before we get to cost, obviously that's really important, and latency, which I didn't really feel like they gave us that much information on. It is said faster. Like it's not as specific as like ChatGPT Enterprise, but that's like supposedly coming. 128K context window. Is Anthropic dead?
I have been tinkering with Anthropic in Bedrock, and the quality of response is on another level. We use on our generative AI product, and you can really tell by looking at the responses, the ones that were given by Claude and the ones that were given by GPT. So I think they are not nearly.
Who's better, GPT or Claude?
Claude.
Yeah. But Claude versus GPT 3.5, not Claude versus GPT 4, correct?
Yes, versus 3.5, exactly. Yeah. I don't use GPT 4 is unusable for us for 100,000 queries per month, as you might imagine. So this is.
Well, it depends on how much revenue is on top of that 100,000 queries.
Like,
could be fine. Now it's half the cost, right?
Yeah. So, but I really, when you are open, I really wanted to discuss about prompting, because I was giving a thought about this during the weekend, and I think that the last stand, a moat for developer is the prompt. So it's gonna stand. If you have a great prompt, you're still in a good place. I have seen some studies that said that GPT could himself make the prompts. So the prompt engineering job was, the days were, counted
right
for the prompt engineering. But I think, thinking about this issue, I think that the prompt is the last mode of it, and I think that this will still make, character AI relevant, and other players that have access to great prompts.
Yeah, but just like not just great prompts, but like the larger context window also allows you to have a much bigger prompt, much more specificity.
Exactly.
Can make a big difference, because so many of these things, if you've got a 4K context window, you do a couple turns. If you had a document involved in that as well, you're out of the context window almost instantly.
Great point.
Yeah.
And also with a bigger context window, you have more capabilities for few-shot learning. You can influence the output of the model much more right now, because you're not constrained by the size of the context window, where you have to, sacrifice your history versus your context versus your RAG versus your few-shot learning approach in terms of the desired output. So that definitely gives better flexibility. But one thing that we can't forget is that it all comes at a cost, right? 128K is not going to come, free of charge, right? You're going to pay for those tokens anyway. So it's sweet and sour at the same time.
Well, that's one of the things I do like about Anthropic, because I don't think they charge it. I think it's just you pay the same amount, tokens in, tokens out. Now maybe it's a higher base, regardless, because like the 100,000 context window is the base for Claude 2. So it's not stratified the way that OpenAI is, correct?
I'm not sure exactly right now what it is, because it changed. Throughout me looking at Anthropic, it changed. They were charging for characters.
I think you just pay for tokens, and so it's like you can control that. You can have more control over that, as opposed to, like if you're working with the higher context window GPT-4, the base price is higher, as well as the token count is higher.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The question is, I haven't seen we've been here, so I haven't seen the actual details on the pricing for the 128K, whether the tokens are more expensive or at the same price. If they're at the same price, if the price for token is getting to the same level, then it won't make much difference, apart from you having to be conscious about not sending 128K with every single user utterance, because then your costs are just going to go through the roof.
So Michael Freenor, like, you've done a lot of this, and hopefully you're not at too much latency right now, but you've done a lot of work in this, and we think about sort of in context 128K, so the in-memory execution versus embeddings, RAG, things like this. There's like a pure efficiency play here too. Any thoughts on this in terms of the larger context window and how that might change architectures in terms of the data that's inputted, outputted, how you use it?
Well, it seems to me like with a much larger context window that there's going to be way more options for jailbreaking. Right?
Oh, okay, yes, like the other downside. Great point. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. I did focus on the downsides, but anyway, yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what sorts of things are opened up, because it's already very hard to anticipate all the different attack vectors, even with the smaller context window. Now once you've increased that to the size of a book, there's going to have to be a lot of study put into this to make sure that there aren't malicious bits of prompting slipped into the middle of something much larger.
But isn't a lot of that about actually developer education? Because when I was starting my career many years ago in development, it was a time when people started becoming conscious about security concerns and things like SQL injections, for example, right? And the theme that was going around was sanitize your inputs. And it feels like we're now full circle. As a developer, if you're building for anything connected to an LLM, one of the first things that you need to think about is sanitizing your input and potentially limiting the size of your input and basic stuff like that, obviously, right? So if you do think about that, I think that the size of the context window might not necessarily pose a big threat if you apply certain practices, obviously.
I could agree with that. I think that, for something like SQL injection, there's a much more defined space for doing one of those, right? As opposed to, jailbreaking an LLM where, the sky's the limit on the sorts of things that you could try with that sort of thing. It's not necessarily, I don't know. It could be the case that some of these jailbreaks are innocuous looking on their surface.
If it's a learning model and or they're using the information inputted and outputted as part of retraining, sort of iterative fine tuning, for example, the larger context window, I think you're right, does provide more opportunity for people to hide things, which might then create issues at the model level, the trained model level. And that's what we always think about model compromise. And a lot of people haven't really thought about that from a security standpoint, but there is this issue of security at the time. But there's also this idea of compromising the model over time. And it might be a long time before that's ever discovered because these tend to be long tail. And that's exactly what a lot of people in the threat cybersecurity and threat intelligence industries will be particularly interested in. I think it's a really interesting point. Tejas, what else from a developer standpoint, like building applications, stood out to you, or any of the things we're talking about, or something else that like you're most intrigued by, or you see could be problematic?
Vision API is coming for Vision. Vision is coming for the API. I think is great. I use almost every day, copy and paste mockups done on PowerPoint to create, little and quick systems. And so I use it a lot here to analyze data as well, to paste tables on it. So I think it will be a nice addition to the API, so it can be added to custom systems. But I think that developers haven't really scratched the surface of what will be possible with Vision. So I'm pretty curious to see what will be the killer app for Vision.
What about you, Tejas?
I think that's just a piggyback of what Zhao said. I think that's kind of like, that was again like one of the critical questions, like what's the killer app going to be? I think that's something which we'll have to see, like what is the killer app? What is the killer GPT going to be, which kind of is used by everyone? I think the larger context window helps. This is something which we have been talking about with like the essential advantage which Anthropic has had over all this time. I think some of the things which you mentioned in general about like keeping their model up to date, so like having it like April 2023, I think, which they mentioned, which is interesting. I think the guys touched upon most of the points that it came to my mind as well. It'll be interesting to see again how this kind of grows out to applications which can be embedded. Like one of the first applications which I used when I switched to GPT-4 was GPT for Sheets, which I thought was like really, really well executed. GPT for Sheets, GPT for Docs, I think both of them were like really well executed, and you could like parameterize a lot of these prompts very easily. And I feel like that's like that presentation layer. I feel like it's going to be even more advanced, and you're gonna have a set of developers who build these presentation applications, which just make prompting that much easier. Now that you have so much of the complexity, which can be abstracted for users who are essentially just starting their careers out in a low code or no code kind of an era where they don't really need to go beyond a certain level of abstraction. And I feel like with these advancements, it's going to make it that much easier to bring out applications at that level. So you're going to see a lot of those type of applications which make using ChatGPT or like with the Vision API, just making it easier to use them more and more.
Yeah.
That whole narrative around the democratization of AI, it's just going to grow, and it's just going to feed into the hype cycle as opposed to it being a little more constrained, because now again the possibilities are exponentially increasing as to what a general end user can do.
Got it. And that's a great point. And then Alan Furstenberg was on the page real time, said GPT-4 Turbo includes 128K, has the lower price. So that's pretty good. I'm going to bring up Eric Schwartz as well. A lot of you guys know Eric, head writer at voicebot.ai. He's probably been monitoring some of the background stuff that's going on. But I did want to say, like, Eric, what are your maybe one or two key takeaways that you would add to the discussion?
I guess there are two or three of the things that really jumped out at me. One is bringing Satya Nadella up and really just emphasizing that even if you're skeptical about some of what they're doing, Microsoft has their back. They're not going to run out of money halfway through these projects. So even if you're skeptical about their long-term futures, you know that they're going to be well funded and have enough support to make to give it a good go at least. So even if it doesn't work out, you can't say it's not because of lack of resources. And the other big thing is, looking at so many of the, talking about like, oh, is this the end of chatbot developers or conversational developers or even voice AI developers? And to me, these analogies aren't perfect, but it makes me think about how once upon a time you needed to be a coding expert to build a website. You need to be a coding expert to design a voice app. And then as these technologies improved, people with just a little bit of coding experience or no coding experience, or people who just had an artistic sense could design just as good of a website or app as any coding expert. And I wonder if this is going to extend into this new realm where, you're not going to have to be an expert on how these conversational AI tools work on a technical level. You're just going to have an understanding of what you want it to do and what the technology itself is capable of. And if you want to pay for, if you're a big company and you want to pay for like real experts to make it super personalized or customized, then you can do that. But if you're just an average person who has a funny idea that you want to test out and throw out there in, half an hour or an hour, you're also going to have that capability the way that anyone now can build the website without any effort or time relative to what it was in the 20 years ago. So I think that's potentially the shift we're going to see.
Okay, let's go around the horn. We'll wrap this up. Actually, Eric, we will start with you. 30 seconds. What is... Actually, do you want to do winners and losers? Maybe that's what we should do.
I mean...
well, you can do... you guys can do winners and losers, or sort of the one key thing. If you were to tell people one thing about this, about what happened, and then maybe winners and losers of the week. Now, winners and losers, if you don't know what that is, we do this every week, Eric and I. We basically identify one company, person, group, whatever, that is a winner from this, from whatever the news was, and one that maybe wasn't. And you can do this. So why don't you do one key? You'd already did your key points. Everyone else will do their key points to close.
Yeah.
Give me a winner and a loser.
I'd say the winner is everyone who managed to score a ticket to it. They got $500 for OpenAI, and who knows what other
there's
bonuses,
probably a lot of swag going on there.
Yeah, and a story to dine out on for a while, I'm sure. But in terms of losers, I'd say any company that thought that all they needed was a very niche, narrow concept of a very specific kind of chatbot or generative AI tool, they're gonna have to go back to the drawing board, because now that's something that OpenAI will offer directly, and the things that they don't offer are an entirely different space.
Yeah. All right, Michael Freenor, you're next.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, obviously, OpenAI is winning.
You got the easy
in terms of losers. Yeah, well, I had to take it early, right? So in terms of losers, it's got to be the whole killing field of startups that have been wiped out since the keynote. I mean, that's I feel for them.
So who do you think got wiped out by this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I imagine there's at least a couple of groups that are working on, say, like querying against the PDF, or any of the sorts of things that are now just rolled straight into the system. Even the built-in RAG has invalidated a lot of work that's been done around RAG systems and chunking and all the rest of it. So depending on how hard a business is leaned into that as their differentiator, or as their key product or something like that, then it's going to be a rough week for them.
And the one, if you were just tell people about one key thing that happened today, you would tell them about.
Let's see. I really like the function calling stuff. I think that's probably key to me, at least. Yeah, I would say that's super impressive. Let's see more around it.
Tejas, winners and losers.
I think the biggest winner was Sam Altman. I feel like this was his day, and I feel like he really showed up. And I think we are probably going to see even better presentation skills next year at this time. But
what about the guy that did the giveaway? He was the Steve Jobs lookalike.
He was really good. But I feel like, again, we talk about, I think Eric touched upon this, like bringing Satya Nadella on, and that interaction was really when you look back, say 10 years from now, you'll see that, this might be like that defining moment where OpenAI kind of got thrust into the mainstream beyond what you think about, and so I feel like Sam, major props to him. I think he's probably the biggest winner at this point, based on what I saw. In terms of losers, I can't really think of anyone who's like loser beyond, I think, the point which Michael made, which is yes, for sure. I think all of us talked about it, like how those small niche startups are going to have to maybe go back to the drawing board and think of what they're doing and how they can kind of still add value. But the one key takeaway I would say is I think the chatbots are coming.
Yes.
Like, I mean, like it's gonna be like it's like the return of the chatbots. Like I'm trying to kind of bring in like a Star Wars analogy over here, but it's coming, and I think I would kind of I'm like cautiously optimistic about this because it seems like it's gonna be real-ish of a deal this time. But I think that's the big watch out. It's like watch out, they're coming, and see what happens and how it kind of pans out. So that's like the one key takeaway for me.
Zhao.
Well, I think that whoever is trying to make a buck on making using ChatGPT easier for other people is gonna have a bigger problem from now on, because OpenAI is decided to make it really simple for everyone to use it. So this whoever have a product or a service that depend on this premise is gonna have a hard time having a job or a company next year, as I think we will see other parties trying to do the same, making everything simple. I have that was established that OpenAI is going for the verticalized way of thinking. They're going from making their services. Their services, you can hire them to create a GPT for your company if you have the money, and from that to offering all the platform things. So this will pretty much end, and I think that the loser, from what I have seen, I tried recently with a tool called Poll, and I was told that there are several others that have the same approach. And I think whoever is betting on that, on building a platform to create agents with a prompt, this is gonna go away too. And on the winner side, I think that whoever keeps an open mind and really tries to keep up with the news, and I'm glad that you make this your mission. It turns for us to be much more easy to follow up. So you can't have a really deep breath. So take short breaths and keep an eye on the news because it's changing really fast.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Okay, Michal Stanislawek, winner, loser, one thing you tell people.
So the real winners, in my opinion, are people who might not even know that they are real winners right now. And these are all the people that have those niche domain knowledge, potentially content that they've created already, that are now going to be empowered to build it or wrap it around into a chatbot with all the LLM, ChatGPT sort of knowledge behind it. I think these we're gonna, through the GPTs, we're gonna see a lot of those people sort of rising and potentially gaining a new channel. Like we're almost looking at a point where new channels of content distribution are being created, right? So I think these are going to be the real winners and losers. Well, I'm not going to be very original, but anyone who thought that they can wrap around OpenAI API, slap a prompt, and make a product out of it, these are the real losers. And it's more obvious now. And maybe those people are going to come to their senses. But equally, any VC that backed people like that can now understand that they are real losers on this.
And I feel terrible for them. The VCs.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key takeaway, something that we haven't really touched much upon, is on the technical side mostly, is that we're now, as developers, getting ChatGPT vision into the APIs. We're getting DALL-E into the APIs. We're getting TTS out of OpenAI, which again gives us more variety, because right now, well, pretty much 11 labs. I mean, if you're thinking like doing streaming and stuff like that, 11 labs with the quality was the only option. And now we're getting TTS, and it comes out of OpenAI. But also Whisper, that again, we haven't touched much upon, with potentially better multilingual support and less hallucinations in Whisper. I think this is, for me, as a developer, this is the key takeaway out of this. But one more thing at the very end. And again, something that we haven't really touched upon, the custom models. And I know that they're going to be super limited, right? But come on, imagine a big company with vast amounts of knowledge working with OpenAI, wrapping it into a model, and then potentially making that model available for us as developers as well. Like, this could be a real game changer in specific areas like finance, like health and research, and all sorts of these crazy fields that have been underserved when you think about just the common knowledge within the data set that the ChatGPT has been trained on.
Absolutely. Those are all really great points. I'll sum this up really quickly. My loser, I'll do first, is the plugin providers. And a little for anybody who stayed all the way to the end of this discussion, my understanding is that they have about 800 plugins today, and it's been frozen. So they've decided that these other things are higher priority. They've also decided, as Adam Chaya and as Doug Kitlaus, the two of the three co-founders of Siri, and the two people who founded Viv Labs, which became Vixby, said, the plugin model they have is not going to work. It's going to create problems, and that's what we've seen. In particular, it's hard to, like, the UX is hard. It's hard to figure out what to choose and everything. But plugins was not mentioned today. It was something that some people were talking about. It could have been in the context of this, like Zapier is essentially like a plugin, but they talk about it as a tool. They're not even using the terminology anymore. Whereas, plugins are still a thing. The architecture is still there. Microsoft's using it through Azure and things like that. But anybody who's building a plugin, you're actually going to have to start over, is my guess.
But I'm sorry to interject here, but in the context of removing the picker, where you were able to pick your plugins, right? The plugins are poof.
Well, maybe. I mean, again, we go back to discovery, personalization, and things like that. And that's my winner. My winner here, or excuse me, actually, I won't. I'll sort of go back. But like, my winner is anybody who actually wants to put out information that's specific to themselves and really drive this. And I think a lot of people from a PR and marketing standpoint are going to find that this is a really significant opportunity for them to change the way they engage, to change the way they steer discussions in the marketplace. As we see the way that people search and consume information changes. I think this is going to be very important for them. And the real winners there are the people who have better knowledge, more depth of knowledge. It's supposed to be the surface level stuff that's like most of the YouTube videos. It's just like you have to wait to 7 minutes to get to like the one thing that's useful in the whole thing, and everything else is just repeat of everything. Those people, I think, are going to have a platform. And I think the one thing I tell about this idea of personal GPT, digital assistants, personal digital assistants, are not just back, they're here for the first time, potentially. We'll see how it comes. Like, the promise and the implementation are often very different, but this idea that you can have a personal assistant either through custom models for your company, and this is something that actually OpenAI forecasted 4, 5, almost 6 months ago now. Like, there was an article we wrote about it. I was just looking at it, I was rereading it. This idea of custom models, so you can customize it, but then you, as an individual, you can have all that power and have your own personal assistant. This could be a renaissance. People talk about voice assistants, chatbots, and everything. They're digital assistants for the individual. And really, I think that's where OpenAI is going to exceed or excel on the application front. I'm not as confident about ChatGPT Enterprise. I'm very confident about ChatGPT as a personal assistant because they've got all the right momentum and all the right use cases for that. All right. Eric, Michal, Tejas, Zhao, Michael Freenor, who had to jump out. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I really enjoyed this discussion. We had a lot of great people, a lot of great comments. Everyone, please hit the like button on LinkedIn or YouTube, and join us for Gain in the future. But hey, folks, thanks so much. This has been pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.